recalls the matter of People of the State of Michigan versus Leandro Rios Jr., 22-6781FH. Members of the jury, I'm going to provide you some instructions. At this point, after these instructions are provided, counsel will have the opportunity to provide an opening statement. And members of the jury, you will have a written copy of these instructions that I'm going to read to you. Actually, they're right in this corner there by juror number 7. You may refer to them during the trial. Since no one can predict the course of the trial, these instructions may change at the end of the trial. At the close of the trial, I will provide you with a copy of my final instructions for your use during deliberations. Now I'm going to explain some of the legal principles that you will need to follow and the procedure that we will follow in this trial. As you're aware, the defendant is charged with the offense of aggravated indecent exposure. To prove this charge, the prosecutor must prove each of the following elements beyond a reasonable doubt. First, that the defendant exposed his genitals. Second, that the defendant knew that he was exposing his genitals. Third, that the defendant was fondling his genitals. Fourth, that the defendant did this in a place under circumstances in which another person might reasonably have been expected to observe it, and which created a substantial risk that someone might be offended, or in a place where such exposure is likely to be an offense against your community's generally accepted standards of decency and morality. In determining this, you must think about the nature of the act and all of the circumstances surrounding the act. A person accused of a crime is presumed to be innocent. This means you must start with the presumption that the defendant is innocent. This presumption continues throughout the trial and entitles the defendant to a verdict of not guilty unless you are satisfied beyond a reasonable doubt that he is guilty. Every crime is made up of parts called elements. The prosecutor must prove each element of the crime beyond a reasonable doubt. The defense is not required, the defendant that is not required to prove his innocence or to do anything. And if you find that the prosecutor has not proven every element beyond a reasonable doubt, then you must find the defendant not guilty. A reasonable doubt is a fair and honest doubt growing out of the evidence or lack of evidence. It's not merely an imaginary or possible doubt, but a doubt based on reason and common sense. A reasonable doubt is just that, a doubt that is reasonable after a careful and considered examination of the facts and circumstances of this case. And a trial follows this procedure. I've kind of alluded to it a little bit already. First, the prosecutor makes an opening statement where he gives his theories about the case. The defendant's lawyer does not have to make an opening statement, but she may make an opening statement after the prosecutor makes his, or she may wait until later. These statements are not evidence. They are only meant to help you understand how each side views the case. Next, the prosecutor presents his evidence. The prosecutor may call witnesses. The testify may show you exhibits like documents or objects. And the defendant's lawyer has the right to cross-examine the prosecutor's witness. After the prosecutor has presented all his evidence, the defendant's attorney may also offer evidence, but does not have to. By law, the defendant does not have to prove his innocence or to do anything. If the defense does call any witnesses, the prosecutor has the right to cross-examine them. The prosecutor may also call witnesses to contradict the testimony of the defense witnesses. After all the evidence has been presented, the prosecutor and the defendant's lawyers will make their closing arguments. So just like the opening statements, these are not evidence. They're only meant to help you understand the evidence and the way each side views the case. You must base your verdict only on the evidence. My responsibilities as the judge in this trial are to make sure that the trials run fairly and efficiently, to make decisions about evidence, and to instruct you about the law that applies in this case. You must take the law as I give it to you. Nothing I say is meant to reflect my own opinions about the facts of the case. As jurors, you are the only ones who will decide this case. Your responsibility as jurors is to decide what the facts of the case are. And this is your job and no one else's. You must think about all the evidence and all the testimony, and then decide what each piece of evidence means and how important you think it is. This includes how much you believe what each of the witnesses has said. What you decide about any fact, excuse me, in this case is fine. Part of your job in deciding what the facts of the case are is to decide which witnesses you believe and how important you think their testimony is. You do not have to accept or reject everything a witness says. You are free to believe all, none, or part of any person's testimony. In deciding which testimony you believe, you should rely on your own common sense and everyday experience. However, in deciding whether you believe a person's testimony, you must set aside any bias or prejudice you may have based on the witness's race, national origin, ethnicity, gender identity, or sexual orientation, or religion, age, or socioeconomic status. There is no fixed set of rules for judging whether you believe a witness, but it may help you to think about these questions. Was the witness able to see or hear clearly? How long was the witness watching or listening? Was anything else going on that might have distracted the witness? Does a witness seem to have a good memory? How does a witness look and act while testifying? Does a witness seem to be making an honest effort to tell the truth? Or does a witness seem to evade the questions or argue with the lawyers? Does the witness's age or maturity affect how you judge her or his testimony? Does the witness have any bias or prejudice or any personal interest in how this case is decided? Have there been any promises, threats, suggestions, or other influences that affect how the witness testifies? In general, does the witness have any special reason to lie or any special reason to tell the truth? All in all, how reasonable does the witness's testimony seem when you think about all the other evidence in the case? When it is time for you to decide the case, you are only allowed to consider the evidence that was admitted in this case. Evidence includes only the sworn testimony of witnesses, the exhibits admitted into evidence, and anything else I tell you to consider as evidence. The questions the lawyers ask the witnesses are not evidence. Only the answers are evidence. You should not think that something is true just because one of the lawyers asks questions that assume or suggest that it is. I may ask some of the witnesses questions myself. These questions are not meant to reflect my opinion about the evidence. If I do ask questions, my only reason would be to ask about things that may not have been fully explored. If at any time you cannot hear something that is said or is presented, or if you cannot see a witness or evidence, please raise your hand immediately and let me know. Excuse me. During the trial, the lawyers may object to certain questions or statements made by the other lawyer or witnesses. I will rule on those objections according to the law. My rulings for one side or against the other are not meant to reflect my opinions about the facts of the case. Sometimes, as you've already noticed, the lawyers and I will have discussions out of your hearing. Also, while you are in the jury room, I may have to take care of matters that have nothing to do with this case. I ask that you please pay no attention to those interruptions, but I'm going to keep them to an absolute minute because your time is extremely important. As I stated before, you must not discuss this case with anyone, including your family or friends. You must not even discuss it with other jurors until the time comes for you to decide the case. When it is time for you to decide the case, I will send you to the jury room for that purpose. Then you should discuss the case among yourselves, but only in the jury room and only when all the jurors are there. You must not talk to the defendant, the lawyers, the witnesses, or anyone who may have been connected or may be connected to this case. This means that you may not speak to these individuals, even if it has nothing to do with this case. You should be very cautious about speaking to people because you may inadvertently speak to someone connected to the case. This restriction is necessary to avoid even the appearance of improper conduct on any person's part. If anyone tries to discuss the case with you or in your presence, tell that person to stop. Explain that you are a juror and you are not allowed to discuss the case. If they continue, simply leave. Report it to me or court staff as soon as you return back. When the trial is over, these restrictions no longer apply. And when the trial is over, you may, if you wish, discuss the case with them. The restrictions I'm about to describe are meant to ensure that the parties get a fair trial. In our judicial system, it is crucial that jurors are not influenced by anything or anyone outside the courtroom. Under the law, the evidence you consider must meet certain standards. So, for example, Witnesses must swear to tell the truth, and the lawyers must be able to cross-examine them. Because information obtained outside the courtroom does not have these safeguards, it could give you incorrect or misleading information that might unfairly favor one side. These restrictions start now and continue until I discharge you from jury service. It is your duty as a juror to decide this case based solely on the evidence you see and hear in the courtroom. You must not consider information that comes from anywhere else. This means until you deliver your verdict, you must not read, watch, listen to, excuse me, any information or receive any information, including opinions or commentary about the case, whether in newspaper, TV, radio, internet, or other social media platforms. You also must not research any aspect of the case during the trial. This means researching using a cell phone, computer, or other electronic device to search the internet, as well as traditional sources that sadly we don't use anymore, like dictionaries, reference manuals, or magazines and newspapers. You must not investigate the case on your own or conduct any experiments concerning the case, including investigation or experiments using internet, cell phones, computers, or electronic devices. You must not visit the scene of any event at issue in this trial. If it is necessary for you to view or visit the scene, court staff will take you there as a group, under court supervision. You must not consider as evidence any personal knowledge you have of the scene. You must not share any information about the case by any means, including cell phones or social media. This means that even if you are not discussing the case with someone else, you may not post any information about the case on social media websites or in any other manner. If you discover that a juror has violated these instructions, please report to the court staff. As you walk in, as I stated earlier, you may take notes during the trial if you wish, but of course you don't have to. If you do take notes, you should be careful that it does not distract you from paying attention to all of the evidence. When you go to the jury room to decide your verdict, you may use your notes to help you remember what happened in the courtroom. If you take notes, do not let anyone except the other jurors see them during deliberation. Your notes will not be examined by anyone, and when your jury service concludes, those notes will be collected and destroyed. So, if you do take notes during the course of this trial, when we take a break, simply take your notepad, place it upside down on your chair. That ensures that no one will be able to see any of your notes. Possible penalty should not influence your decision. If you find the defendant guilty, it is the duty of the judge to fix the penalty within the limits provided by law. I may give you more instructions during the trial, and after all the evidence has been presented, you will hear the lawyer's closing arguments. Following the closing arguments, I will give you additional instructions about the rules of law that apply to this case. You should consider all of my instructions as a connected series. Taken all together, they are the law that you must follow. After my final instructions, you will then go to the jury room and decide on your verdict. A verdict must be unanimous. That means that every juror must agree on it, and it must reflect the individual decision of each juror. Finally, it is most important for you to keep an open mind and not make a decision about anything in the case until you go to the jury room to decide the case. You must not let bias, prejudice, or public opinion influence your decision. Each of us may have biases or perceptions about other people based on stereotypes. We may not be fully aware of some of our other biases, so take the time you need to test what might be automatic or instinctive judgments and to reflect carefully about the evidence. Again, I caution you to avoid reaching conclusions that may have been unintentionally influenced by stereotypes. You must reach your own conclusions about the case individually, but you should do so only after listening to and considering the opinions of the other jurors. They may have different backgrounds and perspectives. That concludes my instructions at this time. Mr. Wallace, you may for your opening. I'm sorry, closing. That was a quick trial. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you.
Yes.
Morning again. So as you will hear in this case, this is what happened at the Dollar Tree store here in Bad Axe in Huron County. They can come by there. You have to consider what we tell you as far as through the evidence. And as you will hear, and no surprise, the Dollar Tree there is in the shopping mall there, just up on North Van Dyke. Across the parking lot, the speedy queue. And off to the west of that shopping mall there is Walmart. And back on January 8th, Tanya Miller was working. As you'll hear, she was an individual employee there at the Dollar Tree. She would take care of a lot of times of the trucks that would come in with the supplies, the new merchandise. Make sure that it's put up on the shelves or on the racks, and that everything's done, ready for the customers. She's been there for a number of years. She will tell you that she saw a newly defendant as a customer there. They've known beyond that, but she saw him on a regular basis. We'd have conversations with them on a regular basis of, how you doing, what's going on, just general things you might say when you saw someone in the store. She will tell you that she's seen him for quite a while, a few years, off and on at different times. On January 8th, at about 3 in the afternoon, she was working in the store, was putting up merchandise in the aisle, basically where the dog toys are at, and that come in that day and hanging out there. And shortly before that, she had seen the defendant and said hi to him again, chatted with him for a couple minutes, and went to do her work. She will say that as she's doing that, she looked over to where the defendant was standing. And he had his penis out, and he was fondling himself. That there was in that aisle a Disney display. And that he was standing closer to her on the other side, essentially blocking that area of the Disney display. And there was his shopping cart was next to him. She would tell you that she had a clear, unobstructed view of him as he was playing with the penis. Upset her, made her mad, angry, disgusted, to play all of those things. And that she then left and went to the office there for the Dollar Tree. As you'll hear that day, she then waited for the defendant to leave the store. She then went up to another person that was working there. It was Candace, it was Kenny, and she was working the register at the time. This Kenny will tell you she did not see anything because she was at the register. She wasn't in the aisle. This Miller went up to Ms. Kenny, he said, you have to disinfect your hands, disinfect the register. You need to take care of this. That's saying that she was upset. She did not call the police then, or at that point in time. She would tell you she wanted to talk to someone she knew. She felt comfortable talking about what happened. So the next day, which is a Sunday, the 9th, she emailed her manager of the store and let them know what happened. And then on Monday, the 10th, she went in and saw Detective Block, who she knew from home. I felt comfortable talking to him. Now, as you hear, she didn't know the defendant's name at the time. She knew. She went into the store to work on that Wednesday, the 12th. She was there in the morning, as was Miss Kenny. And as they were there, I came back in. At that time, Ms. Miller called dispatch, called for the police to say, trying to get a hold of Detective Knoblauch, who was unavailable. And I asked an officer to come so they could identify the defendant. While they were there, the officer did show up, Officer Pulaski. So the identification, identified the defendant, and then forwarded that information on to Detective Knoblauch. Then in essence, ladies and gentlemen, there's going to be other pieces of evidence there. We have about 5 witnesses that you've heard, and you can see in the list there. There'll be bits and pieces coming in from different witnesses about what happened that day and beyond that day. Trying to give you that full picture of it. And as you're listening to the evidence, I ask that you keep in mind the elements that we have to prove in this case. And the court has indicated these elements again already, but we'll do so here shortly after the end of the case. And as we indicated, these are the 4 elements that must prove. As you're listening to everything, 54, no more, no less. And we'll have to show that the defendant exposed his genitals, his penis. But he knew he was doing it, it wasn't just happy chance. That he was fondling his genitals, and he did it in a place where another person might reasonably be expected to observe it, and it created a potential risk that someone might be offended. You'll hear all of that information from Ms. Miller. As she tells you what she saw and had no issue of seeing or observing during that time. At the conclusion of the case, once you've heard all the evidence and have the instructions by the court, I would be asking for it to come back with a verdict of guilty as charged. Thank you.
Ms. Sue, would you like to make your opening statement? You wish to reserve this.
Oh, yeah.
You may proceed.
Good morning, everyone. Just want to thank all of you for being here today, taking time out of your lives to be here and have a very, very important role as fact-finders of this case here. Mr. Wallace had just indicated as to what he believes will be presented, and we don't disagree that Mr. Rios, my client, don't disagree that he was at the store. Yes, he was at the store. The Dollar Tree is a store that we would frequently go to and then had gone to for years. And as you know, Ms. Miller for around 2019, and they would have conversations. Nothing too much, but I mean, still, I believe that they would maybe consider each other things that are friends. We believe that the evidence will show that Mr. Rios, he went every day, went to Dollar Tree to do some shopping, as he typically would. There was a conversation between him and Ms. Miller, and Ms. Miller shown that she left the conversation. Mr. Rios finished up whatever shopping he had to do, checked out, he just stayed as though any other day. I ask that all of you continue to keep an open mind when you hear all of the testimony and see all the evidence that is presented today. And I believe that after you all have had the opportunity to really consider everything, circumstances, all of that, we believe that the prosecutor will fall short and not be able to present evidence to prove the elements of the charge beyond a reasonable doubt. And therefore, I would ask at that point, obviously, that all of you can have the verdict of not guilty.
Wallace, first, please.
Give us all time to know it.
Please step up to this witness stand. Before you have, would you please stop a moment, raise your right hand, facing the court administrator.
You solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this case is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Please be seated. Be seated as comfortable as you can be. The witness speaking loudly and clearly so everyone can hear. Mr. Wallace, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You're welcome.
You could please state your name and spell your last name?
Tanya Jane Miller, Miller.
And ma'am, where do you work at?
I work for Dollar Tree here in Dallas.
Is that on North Van Dyke Road?
Yes,
And you said Bad Axe, but also in Huron County?
yes.
How long do you work there?
I've worked there for 12 years.
What's your job there now? Let me rephrase it. Back in 2022, what was your job at that point?
I was the merchant assistant manager.
That's still true?
Yes,
As the merchant assistant manager, what does that mean? What do you do?
I unload truck. I put stock out on the floor, milling, ice, shelves.
And how long has that been your role?
I've been stacker probably 12 years. I've been a merchant as manager probably about 4 years and 5 years.
And as part of that, then you said stocking, so that putting things on the shelves, on the racks for customers to buy.
Exactly.
You do this after hours, during hours? When does that happen?
When I punch in.
And would you normally punch in when the store is open or closed? Or both?
It depends on when I'm at schedule, because I'm not scheduled every day the same time.
Depends on the trucks get there.
Depends on when the truck's there or how many hours we are given for the week.
Back on January 8th of 2022. Did you work that day?
Yes, I did.
You recall when you started that day?
I started at 1:30 that afternoon. I was the closing manager.
And by that you mean you'll be there until the store closes?
Right, we close at 9 o'clock, but we don't get out of there until about 9:15.
And on that day, you said you got there at 1:30. What were you doing?
I punched in at 1:30 and then the morning manager told me that there was a few cases and electric hardware that needed to go out because we were getting ready for our switch over, because we used to be $1 and then on the 10th we had switched over to $1.25.
So things had to happen because of that.
Right.
So after you spoke with the morning manager, what did you do?
I went directly to the back and grabbed the cases that she said that needed to go out.
And put those out.
Exactly.
Now, at about 3 in the afternoon, what were you doing at that time?
I was in that electric hardware.
I'm sorry, what was it again?
It's called Pat Electric Hardware.
Tech electric hardware. Okay.
Those were the items that I was putting out.
May I approach you on?
You may.
Showing the mark as proposed 2 and proposed 3. And the 2 pictures of the general scene area, those, is that the aisle you're talking about?
Yes,
Do those 2 pictures, 2 and 3, accurately reflect how it looked that day?
Yes.
This time around, move for the mission of proposed 2 and proposed 3.
After you've had an opportunity. Thank you. Items 2 and 3 are done.
And this is exhibit 2 that we're showing on the screen right now. And you said pets and electric hardware?
Yes.
I'm assuming with the, since we have bones there, that's we talk about the pets.
Yes.
And then down here a little farther is that, or is it
The opposite side that where the hardware would be.
to down to the, in this picture, the left of the picture?
Right.
I'm sorry?
To the right.
Okay.
On the opposite side of the aisle is.
Oh, behind you, as far as in the sense of the aisle. And actually, in exhibit 3, you can see a little bit better of that. This is the same aisle, right?
Yes.
And again, we got the pets. And you're saying over here in this area would be what you call this.
Further down is where
What's this here in the middle?
that is our Disney display that has our magic towels in it.
Okay, what in it?
Our Disney display that has magic towels in it.
Okay. And that was, I mean, this is January 8th, so it's after the holidays.
Right.
Where, in exhibit 3, approximately where were you at in this picture, ma'am?
I was at where those tiny dog toys are. They're pink, blue, and green, lime green.
This here?
Yes.
So this area here, you were, what were you doing there?
I was putting those dog ones out.
Okay, so you were stocking this particular rack.
Yes, I was.
Up to that point, have you seen anybody that you recognize in the store?
Yes.
And how did that come about?
I was putting out the super glue that was a little bit further on the other side of the Disney display.
So super glue would be somewhere over this side over here?
Right, and be a little bit further down.
Okay,
And then I had a customer come out and he was talking to me. And then I left there and I went to the dog bones and started putting those up. He had his back towards the Disney display with his cart next to him. And we were talking, when I looked over and I looked down, he had his penis out playing with it. And I walked away and went to the manager's office.
now you mentioned this customer, you said hi to him. If you saw him again, would you recognize him?
Yes, I would.
Is he in the courtroom today?
Yes, he is.
Where's he at, what's he wearing?
He's sitting over there wearing a blue shirt.
Where's the record show, she's identified the defendant?
Record so reflects.
And as far as the defendant, you said you saw him, said hi to him. Was this someone you've seen before?
Yes, I have.
How often?
Probably once a week, maybe
For how long?
for a while. I can't specifically remember a timeline.
But it was over a time period.
Right.
And during those times that you see him, general conversations, say hi and so forth?
Yes.
Did you ever have interaction with him outside of the store?
No. Besides saying hi when I'm in the available kind of break.
So you might be still in the grounds of the business,
Right.
in your store, in your car, and he walks by or something like that.
Right.
Okay. I'm wondering, man, we certainly approach you on the issue. Showing you is a market proposed one, an aerial photograph. Do you recognize what the area where that's showing?
Yes.
And in general, what is it?
It's our business.
And it's an aerial photograph looking down of that area.
Yes,
As best you can tell, does that accurate represent that area in the aerial photograph?
yes.
Move to the admission of proposed one, Your Honor.
I think plaintiffs wanted, people wanted this.
And ma'am, this here. So the Dollar Tree would be somewhere in this area here.
Yes, sir.
What's over here?
That is CDQ now, but it used to be the Bad Axe Market.
Okay. And when you were saying you might be in your car and you might see him would be somewhere in the lot here.
Yes,
Okay.
it would be in the back part.
Back parking lot about back here?
No. Right there.
Okay, back being the other side of the lot.
Yes,
So towards the front of the store, but across the street.
or whatever.
You mentioned that you had numerous contacts with the defendant over the years, or over the time period that you can best recall.
Yes,
I think it's about once a week or so.
something like that.
Any issues during those contacts?
No,
Any concerns at all whatsoever?
no,
Talked to him, and he talked back, and everything was fine.
yes,
Did he help out in other ways with you?
yes, he did.
How was that?
My son has a grade 4 cancer tumor inside the brain that is inoperable. A friend of mine was doing a fundraiser to help me out because I had taken 3 months off work. And he had donated $100 to my son's fundraiser.
You approach, Your Honor? You may. Showing the March 5, the proposed 5, this photograph. Is that a picture of the fundraiser that you were doing?
Yes,
Is it an accurate picture of that fundraiser?
yes,
Move for the admission of proposed 5, Your Honor.
Oh, definitely.
Think people's files in there.
And you said, man, he donated to that cause.
yes, he did.
So to all intents and purposes, you had no issues whatsoever with him.
No, I haven't.
January 8th, you mentioned you were at the racks there where the bones are at, for the dogs.
Yes,
And you looked, and you were talking to him at that point in time.
yes, I was.
Nothing unusual about that at that moment.
No,
You've done that before in other times.
yes,
When you looked, you said you looked down and saw what?
he had his penis out and he was playing with himself.
Now, was that, you said his penis out, were his pants still up or down?
They were still up. He had sweatpants on. Where he took it out through the hole.
And when you said he was playing with himself, was that one hand or two hands?
One hand.
Was there anything else? Where was he at in relation to what you could see?
He had his back towards the Disney display.
We're going to exhibit 3. This being in the Disney display,
Yes, sir.
and he had his back, he said, to that.
Yes, he did.
So he was facing you,
Yes, he was.
and you were here at the time.
Yes, I was.
Anything between where you were standing and where he was standing to block your view?
No,
When he was standing there, was it straight on, sideways?
straight.
Was there anything on this side of him at that time?
His card.
Do we have a shopping cart of a sort?
Yes.
Yeah, sort, shopping cart.
Yes,
Were there any items that you remember in this cart?
I don't remember.
And You mentioned you looked down, and then what did you do?
I walked away and went to the manager's office
Why?
because it disgusted me. I thought he was a friend, and not a, wasn't able to do something like that. You know, it's everything I have been through.
You went to the office
And I stayed there
for how long?
until he left.
And did you see him leave?
Yes, I did.
Did you see where he went? So after he leaves there, when did you next see him?
I saw him on the 12th of
Oh,
January.
I'm sorry, on the 8th,
Um,
as far as you went in the office, where do you see him from the office?
Through the window
Okay. And where do you see him at?
at the cash register.
At that time, who was working the cash register?
Candy.
Had she been working there for very long at that time, if you know?
I can't remember.
So you saw him at the register. Did you see what he was doing, or could you tell what he was doing?
He was checking out.
And at that point, then he finally leaves.
He walked out the door
Did you see where he went from there?
to his vehicle.
What kind of vehicle was it, if you remember?
I don't remember.
And so he leaves the store. What do you do at that point?
The moment he got into his vehicle, I had opened the manager's door and told the cashier to use hand sanitizer on her hand
Why?
because he had been playing with his penis.
And based on what you saw happen.
Yes,
And did she do that?
yes, she did.
What happened then as far as that day?
After he pulled out, I went over and opened the cash drawer. And I grabbed the disinfectant spray and sprayed all the money and coins with the spray.
Have you ever done that before?
No, I haven't.
How long did you work at Dollar Tree?
I've worked for Total-Leigh for 12 years.
Ever had that kind of an issue happen before?
No,
Where'd you work before that?
I was a bartender / waitress for 17 years.
Ever had that issue happen there?
No,
So you take care of the cash drawer, and the register.
yes.
What did you do at that point?
Then the second shift came in and I took Candy's drawer down. We went into the office and I told her what happened.
At that point, on the 8th, had you contacted anybody else outside of who was there at the store?
No,
Why not?
because I was shocked. I couldn't believe what he had did that day.
After the 8th, did you?
Yes, I did.
What did you do?
On the 9th, I sent a email to our DM.
What's a DM?
It's our district manager. And then on the 10th, I went and saw Kevin Snowball.
The gentleman that's seated here at the table?
Yes,
Why did you go, or why, was there a reason you wanted to see Kevin, or?
it's because I was uncomfortable. Because I just couldn't believe that somebody could do something like that. And I didn't know who to talk to.
And you knew Kevin was an officer?
Yes,
How long did you know Detective Knobloch at that time? You think approximately?
I've known Kevin probably maybe 20 years.
On a regular basis?
No,
But you felt comfortable talking to him,
yes,
and that's what you did on the 10th, that Monday.
yes.
Now, at the time, on the 10th or on the 8th, whichever, did you know the defendant's name?
No, I didn't.
He's just someone you'd seen and talked to and had donated to the cause.
Yes.
After the 10th, did you see the defendant again?
I had saw him on the 12th, he came into the store.
Okay, let me stop you there. You were at the store, why?
I was going in to check my schedule and talk to the store manager.
About what time of day was this?
I don't remember.
You remember if it was morning or afternoon?
I'm not 100% sure.
Okay. So you're in the store, talk to the manager, the store manager, about your schedule. What happens then?
And then the defendant walks in, and then I called the police station. And the police officer came out and talked to me.
Who else was working, if you recall, on Wednesday that day?
I don't remember.
But the person that you saw on Saturday, the 8th, was the same person you saw on Wednesday, the 12th.
Yes.
Yeah, did you saw the officer speak with him on the 12th?
I don't remember.
Yeah, approach him.
Issue.
Showing the mark as proposed for from the camera, but does that actually reflect the area there, the register area?
Yes.
There's two people in that photograph. Do you recognize either one of them?
Yes.
And who are they?
It is me and Candace.
Well, this is from a body cam, but it's an accurate representation of the area that you're standing in.
Yes.
Move for the admission of proposed for, Your Honor.
Take people's scores in there.
Oh, man. There's 1, 2 here. Are there other registers as well?
Yes. On the other side, there is 3, 4.
Okay, so you have the store has a total of 4 registers.
Yes.
1 and 2, and then this one right here would be 3,
Yes.
and then there's another one on the other side.
Yes.
Okay. Can we see the office window that you would have been in?
Yes.
Is that here, right here?
Yes.
So you went back to this office here, and you could see through that window there.
Yes.
Okay. When the defendant came to check out on the 8th, which register did he go to?
Register 4.
So that would be on the other side. At that. And that's the one that you then had disinfected.
Yes.
Approach, Your Honor.
Issue.
And when we'll show you what the mark I proposed 6. In general, do you recognize what it is?
Yes.
And so in general, what is it?
It is a printout of the receipt of the items that the defendant bought that day.
On the 8th?
Yes.
And is that something you provided to Detective Canova?
Yes, I did.
On the 12th, when you called the police, who did you try to get first?
I just dialed 911,
dial-in, and someone did, an officer did respond.
yes,
You have to know the officer's name?
no,
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Cross-examination, Mr. Oh, actually, counsel approach too. Wait a minute.
Hello. So you, Ms. Miller, you indicated that you had known Mr. Rios for quite some time,
yes,
years, would you say?
exactly how long, it's been a while,
And, I told you around 2019, that you met him, but that's not accurate.
I'm not for sure.
Okay. You had mentioned that, Mr. Rios had donated to a fundraiser that was held for your son.
Yes,
And I'm sorry to ask, but when was your son diagnosed with this?
it was diagnosed May 14th, 2021.
Okay. And Mr. Rios has donated to the cause. How did, Mr. Rios know about this fundraiser? Or,
Because I had flyers and I asked him to put one up in his shop.
and, in regards to the flyer, were you, surprised that he donated money?
Yes,
And where were you at when you gave this flyer to Mr. Rios?
we were out in the parking lot. I had him in my,
Parking lot, right on the shore?
yes,
And in regards to what you testified to, what you saw with Mr. Rios, when you initially started, or when the conversation was being had between you and Mr. Rios, who initiated that conversation?
I don't remember. Because we first started talking when I was putting off the approval. And then he followed me over to the dog place.
And what did you talk about?
I don't remember. It was just like a normal conversation.
And as you testified, you said you did not know his name at the time.
No,
Did you know anything about Mr. Rios?
yes,
Do you know, anything about his family and personal life?
yes,
You had been introduced to his wife at some point, is that correct?
yes.
And you considered Mr. Rios a friend?
At that time, yes, I did.
And in regards to, seeing Mr. Rios, with his penis out, about how far into the conversation did you see his penis?
I don't remember how far in the conversation, but I left immediately and went to the office.
About how far away were you from Mr. Rios when you said that you saw his penis?
He was standing by the display a couple feet maybe. I don't remember specifically.
Okay. But anywhere between 2 to 5 feet, was that accurate, maybe?
Maybe.
Okay. And how long did you look at his penis?
Not very long. I was shocked and I walked away.
But you got to look at it?
Yes, I did.
So approximately how much of his penis was, his hand?
That happened.
So you got a clear shot of the head.
Yes.
Did it appear to be circumcised?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the question.
Did you appear to be circumcised?
Thank you.
I'm sorry, your answer.
I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, you had testified earlier that Mr. Rios took out his penis, really like through his pants.
Yes.
So did you actually saw Mr. Rios take out his penis?
No, I didn't see him take it out. It was already out when I went down.
And was Mr. Rios speaking to you at the same time that he was?
Yes.
But that clearly wasn't for very long, because as you stated, you had just walked away from the conversation.
Yes.
And did Mr. Rios have a part with him?
Yes.
Approximately from the time you went to that back office, when you went there, how much longer was Mr. Rios at that store?
I don't remember.
Ms. Miller, I'm sorry, I was waiting for. Are there any surveillance cameras inside the store?
No.
None at all whatsoever?
There's surveillance cameras there, but they don't work. Inside the store.
So other than you saying that Mr. Rios allowed his penis to was playing with it in front of you, prior to that, would you agree that the day was just like any ordinary day when you see Mr. Rios come to the store?
Yes.
And when Mr. Rios would come to the store, would you two have a conversation or speak every time?
Sometimes we do.
In regards to, the cart that Mr. Rios had with him, yeah, just in general, how big are those carts that, the store had?
The cards,
The shopping carts?
your normal shopping cart for a small store like that.
Would be like the size of like Walmart carts or?
Smaller than a Walmart cart.
Were you able to tell if Mr. Rios' penis was erect at the time?
I don't remember.
What's the next question?
Could you repeat the last question?
If,
Thank you.
if you, to tell, Mr. Rios' penis was erect.
Sure, number 11, you did hear the question now.
No, I understood that, sir.
Okay, thank you. See if you make it. Thank you. Redirect, Mr. Wall.
And you mentioned you gave the flyers as to them while you're out in the parking lot.
Yes,
And we're talking about this particular area of the parking lot.
yes,
Do you remember where you were parked at or where this was at?
in the back right there,
So this side over here,
yes.
remember in
I
relation?
don't remember which parking spot I was in.
Okay. Then, and I'm sorry for the record, that was exhibit 1 that we were pointing at. Looking, ma'am, at exhibit 3. I heard you correctly, you were, initially, when you first saw him, you were working with Lou.
Yes,
And you testified at one point that that's farther down on this side.
yes,
Is it on the other side of this particular stand, the Disney stand?
yes,
Okay, so it's, and you saw, so you two were talking on the other side of the Disney stand, whatever you call it,
this one,
display, thank you. So you were on the other side of the Disney display initially,
yes,
and then you mentioned you came to work on the bones,
yes,
and if I heard you correctly there across, you said he followed you.
yes,
So he came on the other side of the Disney display.
yes,
You were asked about distance, as far as how far away he was when this happened. I'm gonna start to approach you, ma'am, slowly. You tell me when to stop, when you think it's about the same distance that was that day.
right,
So from here to where I'm standing right now, and council can see it, I'm not gonna estimate, I guess, but this is where you, how far away he was when you saw his penis.
yes,
And again, anything blocking you at all?
no,
You mentioned you could see the head of his penis. Was his hand moving during this time?
I don't remember,
But he had his hand on his penis.
yes,
You may sit down. Status of this witness, Mr. Wall.
Yes, should be excused, Your Honor.
Any objection? You're also excused. Thank you. Members of the jury, it's a little past noon. Obviously, it's around 12:08. We'll take our noon recess. We'll reconvene in 1 hour. I'd ask that you return back to the courtroom at 1:08 p.m. And when you come back into the courtroom, whether you're parked on the south side of the building or the north side of the building, come directly to the second floor. And the door behind me, room 207, will be the door that you enter. When you go to lunch, you go anywhere you wish for lunch, so long as you're back here by 1:08, so we can begin right after that. I have to remind you again, you're not to discuss the case with anyone, nor go to the Dollar Tree or look up any aspects relative to the case. Don't go online. Look up any aspects of the case there as well. Also, I have to remind you, do not read, listen to, or watch any news reports in case there's no media outlet here, but I have to advise you this instruction. Because again, you are only to consider the evidence that's presented here in court. So when you leave, members of the jury, Ms. Hatch will escort you back to the jury room, grab your things, go anywhere you wish for lunch. Return here no later than 1:08 p.m. to 207. When you get to 207, there's a little doorbell there on the door post. Just hit that doorbell. That'll indicate to us that you are back. You'll hear a chirping sound of the lock. It's an electronic chirp. Just grab the handle, pull down. You'll walk right in, and you'll be escorted back to the jury room. And remind you as well, if you see any of the attorneys or any of the parties or any of the witnesses involved, you're not to speak with them as well. When you come back into the county building, just simply come directly to the second floor to 207, and you can have a seat in the jury. We'll take our new. Oh, yeah, just flip your note. If you did take notes, just simply place them upside down on your chair. We'll reconvene in approximately an hour. All rise, please. See you at 1:08. Off the record. Back up. On the matter of People versus Rios, members of the jury have returned from lunch. I hope you had a nice lunch break. Continue with the trial. We are still in the people's case in chief. And Mr. Wallace, you may come to the next witness.
Thank you. People call Indecent.
Would you please stop a moment, raise your right hand.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this case is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you.
Please be seated. And Mr. Wallace, you may proceed.
Thank you. State your name, please, and spell your last name.
My name is Candace Fox,
How do you spell Fox?
FOX.
And I said Candace Kinney. Why is that?
I have been divorced.
But back in 2022, it was Kinney at that time?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And Ms. Fox, where do you work at? As far as right now?
Right now, I work for Amazon Flex,
And back in 2022, where did you work at?
Dollar Tree.
Do you recall when you started working there? Approximately?
December, beginning of January that year.
So December of 2021, January 2022, sometime in there?
Yeah.
How long did you work there till? Approximately, again?
April?
So only a few months.
Yes.
And do you know Tanya Miller?
Yes, it is.
And how's that?
She was one of my managers.
At the Dollar Tree?
Yes, sir.
Now, while you were there at the Dollar Tree, what was your role?
Cashier, sometimes I was stock show.
Did you have regular hours always the same time, or did it change?
No, sometimes it was days, sometimes it was at night.
On January 8th of 2022, were you working that day?
Yes,
Do you recall what shift?
it was a day shift.
Which would start when approximately?
Usually I would start around 9, between 9 and 10,
And how long would that go till?
3 or 4.
Did you see Ms. Miller that day as well?
Yes.
She was working?
Yes.
Now, at approximately a little after 3 o'clock in the afternoon, what were you doing at that time?
I was working on the register.
Was there any particular register you would work? Would it vary as far as at that time on a day, or how would that be done?
It just depended. Usually I was on the one by the door. Sometimes I would be in a different spot. All the time.
How about that day? Do you recall which one you were on that day?
Yeah, I was up by the front door.
Would that also be known as register 4?
Yes.
And doing what we would anticipate someone doing at a register.
Right.
Customers come up, buy things, check it out, and then they leave.
Yes, sir.
Did there come a time when Ms. Miller came up to you and mentioned about disinfectant?
She was standing behind me. And I kind of looked back and I was like, everything okay? She's like, I'll tell you in a minute. She's like, just wait on your customer, so I did. And then the customer left and she had me put a hand sanitizer on. And she opened my door and sprayed the money with me.
That customer, if you saw that person, male or female?
Ma'am,
You saw that person again, would you recognize that person?
yes,
That person here in the courtroom today?
Yes.
We're at right now, wearing what?
it's right there in the blue shirt.
For the record, Your Honor, she's pointing toward the defendant and identified him.
Record shall reflect the same.
So he, defendant was there as a customer, purchasing scene, whatever.
Right,
You recall any of the items at this point?
I do not.
So she had you disinfect your hands, and also you saw her do the drawer for the till.
Right.
What happened after that, if anything?
It wasn't much long later, we had to take my door down for the day, because it was end of my shift. And when we were in the office and she was counting my drawer out, she told me what happened.
Okay, and without getting into anything else in that, but she talked to you at that point in time.
Yes,
When you saw her at the register, how did she appear?
nervous.
Did that change at all during the rest of the afternoon?
I wasn't there that much longer, I don't think, but you could tell she was nervous. Yeah.
Do you recall what the defendant was wearing, or you saw that day?
Blue jeans and it was a winter coat, I think it was gray and had blue on it.
And as far as you say winter coat, so we're talking a heavy duty or a much
Yeah,
heavier coat.
bigger coat.
This is January.
Right.
Okay. And colors were it again?
I'm pretty sure it was gray with some blue on it.
And you saw blue jeans is what he was wearing as far as pants.
Yes.
Now, when he was in the aisles, what were you doing during that time, if you can recall?
Working at the register, catching out other customers.
So you pretty much, that time frame around that time, were at the register most of the time then?
Oh, yes.
You approach him?
Yes, you may.
Jonathan marked as proposed 6. In general, do you recognize what that is, ma'am?
The receipt, my register.
And is that the receipt that you can tell that you would have dealt with in a particular way?
Yeah, it's got my associate number on it.
And you say your associate number, so that number unique then to the store at that time?
Yes,
And does this appear to be the receipt that you had for the defendant for his purchases on the 8th?
incorrect, yes.
It appears to be an accurate copy.
Yes, sir.
I move for the admission of proposed 6, Your Honor.
Thank you. Even 6 is admitted.
Now, during this time, so prior to Ms. Miller coming up to you, did you have any interaction with the defendant that you recall?
No, I did not.
Basically, he came to the register and checked out.
Right,
Did you see him after that day?
one time.
When was that?
I want to say it was, I can't be 100% sure. It was the next time I worked. I might have been the next day or the day after that, I think.
And what happened during that time?
I was waiting on customers at the same register. I looked up, noticed there was an officer standing by the front door. And I just kept doing my job and he tells me no line and I cashed him out. He walked outside and the officer followed me.
And you see the officer talk to him?
For a second, but I was busy with my customers, so I couldn't just,
You went back to work.
yeah.
And that was the defendant the officer spoke with?
Yes.
You recall the officer's name or anything about him at all? But that was
Younger,
younger,
and dark hair.
okay. That's what you call it, remember that? So that was the next time you saw the defendant was from the 8th, whatever that next time was.
Yes, sir.
On exhibit number 6, yeah, approach your honor.
Yes, you may.
Does it indicate how payment was done or made on that case, the situation?
Cash.
For how much, just to finish up with that?
It was for 1436. We paid with the 20 and then gave them back 560.
When, on the 8th, on the Saturday that, you worked on the drawer, disinfected, when the defendant left, did you see how he left? And on the time next time you saw him arrive, did you see how he arrived?
No, I did not.
I have no further questions.
Cross-examination.
So you had testified that you were cashing out customers on January of 2022.
Right.
And was that while Mr. Rios was in the store?
Yeah.
So, approximately how many customers were in the store, if you remember?
I do not remember. I know I was pretty busy.
You were pretty busy? Okay.
Thank you. Redirect, Mr. Wolf.
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Please sit down. Status of the booth.
We'd ask that you be excused, Your Honor.
Any objections?
Objection.
You're also excused. Thank you. Mr. Wallace, your next witness, please.
You'll call Officer Kolaski.
Officer, could you please step up to the witness stand? Before you have a seat, would you please stop raising your right.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in the case, be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth, so
I do. Please be seated. You may proceed. Thank you, Hunter.
State your name, please, and spell your last name.
I'm Officer Hunter Classen, T-A-L-A-S-K.
You're wearing a uniform, you work for the Bad Axe Police Department?
Yes, sir.
Approximately for how long?
I've been a law enforcement for 2 years.
And in general, what are your duties?
Road patrol.
Basically means you get to do everything that's out there.
Yes, sir.
Were you working on January 12th or during the day at that time?
I was.
You recall what your shift was in that day?
It was from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m.
So a 12-hour shift?
Yes,
And at some point, were you dispatched to the Dollar Tree store?
I was.
And why was that?
To identify a male subject. I arrived there, store employee, point out the male subject, who would later be identified as the defendant. I got his identification and got a phone number from him.
About what time was this when you were there?
I don't recall.
And you said a store employee pointing this person out. You remember who that employee was?
I do not.
When you said you spoke to him through that mail,
Yes,
and if you saw him again, would you recognize him again?
yes,
Is he in the courtroom today?
yes.
Where is he at? What's he wearing?
He's sitting at the defendant's table wearing a blue, button-up shirt.
For the record, shall identify the defendant.
Record shall reflect the same.
Where did you speak to him at?
I was out in the parking lot by his vehicle.
Do you recall what kind of vehicle it was?
I do not.
And how long did you speak to him for approximately?
Approximately 5-10 minutes.
That is identification.
Yes.
Identified him as Leandro Rios Jr.
Yes,
And that was the nature of your contact with him at the time.
yes.
Thank you. Cross-examination, sir.
I don't have any questions for this.
Status of the witness.
We'd ask he be excused, Your Honor.
Civic objection.
No objection.
You're also excused, officer. Thank you. Your next witness.
We'll call Darlene Krzyzewski.
Good afternoon, miss. Would you please step up to this witness stand? Before having a seat, would you please stop raising your right hand, facing the deputy court administrator?
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony about to give in this case is the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yes.
Thank you. Please be seated.
Thank you, Your Honor. State your name, please, and spell your last name.
Darlene Krzyzewski, Kershevske.
And then back in January of 2022, where did you work at?
Subway here, got it.
And is there also a gas station there?
Yes, it's BDQ.
CDQ, some sort of a combination of
Yeah.
CDQ, Subway.
Yep.
And we got my Your Honor.
Sure.
Can't do it to number one, but we're looking at Exhibit 1, you see where you worked at on there?
Yes,
And that would be down in this area down here?
yes,
Okay. Does the Subway or CDQ have cameras there?
yes, they do.
And in general, what do they show?
Pretty much the parking lot, the gas pump, a little bit of the driveway to the source next door, but not much.
At a time a little bit later, after January 8th, after January 12th, did that time Detective Knobloch contact you?
Yes, you come into the store.
And did he ask to see some video?
Yes,
Did you accommodate that request?
yes, I did.
And was that for January 8th at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon?
Yes.
And how did that come about as far as what you did?
Well, being the manager, I had access to the cameras, so I could keep an eye on things, and when I was asked if I had that video access to them, I told yes.
And did you play anything for him at that time?
Yes, I did.
And what was that?
The vehicles pulling in and out of the parking lot next door to the Subway.
And then when you say the next door, you're talking about next door over here?
Yes, where the Little Caesars and Dollar Tree stores are.
Okay, and so your camera then shows this basic area here?
Yes,
And that's what you pulled up on your system at that one time? Was, if you know, a recording made at that time?
yes.
And how was that done?
He used his cam on his police cam to video off my phone.
So you pulled it up on your phone
Yes,
and played what was being looked for.
yes.
You remember the time that it was when it started as far as what it reflected? Maybe that's a terrible question, but,
No, I don't.
okay. Yeah, approach on.
Yes, you may.
Showing the mark of the proposed 7. With the disc. Have you seen that before, Jim?
Yes, I have.
And have you watched what's on the disc?
Yes, I have.
Is it an accurate copy of what you showed to Detective Canova?
Yes,
How long is it approximately?
about 2 minutes.
You're on move the commission and propose 7.
Thank you. People 7 is it?
And then what do you recall seeing as far as the proposed in exhibit 7 in general?
There was a white, light bar, Chevy van, I think it's Chevy van, but it's full-size white van that pulled into the parking lot.
Did you ever see anything about that van leaving?
No,
Did you look?
yes, I did.
But nothing showed it leaving, at least on that camera angle.
No,
This time around, I would like to play exhibit 7.
You may. Do you need the license at all?
I don't think so, Your Honor. This is the entrance up here. And that's the van you were talking about? And it goes outside, and that's the last you see it on the under system.
yes.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Thank you. Cross examination.
I don't have any questions.
You may sit down. Any objection to this witness being excused?
You just don't ask.
Thank you. You're also excused. Walsh, your next witness.
People call Kevin Canova.
Do you solemnly swear testimony about this case is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing
Yes.
Walsh, you may proceed.
State your name, please, and spell your last name.
Kevin Knoblach, Knoblach.
And back on in 2022, what was your job then?
In 2022, I was a detective sergeant for the Bad Axe Police Department, charged with investigations.
Is that currently your job?
It is not.
You're retired.
I am retired, yes.
And back then as a detective sergeant, he said in charge of investigating what?
Crimes, anything that was turned over to me.
On January 10th, 2022, did you come in contact or meet with Tanya Miller?
I did, yes.
Did you know her from before?
I did, yes.
About how long do you think?
A number of years, just passing, working in the bowling alley, just probably 15, 20 years maybe.
She came, spoke to you where?
At the Bad Axe Police Department.
And after getting information from her, what did you do at that point in time?
I interviewed the victim, and after that, I had conducted follow-up investigation.
Did you go to the Dollar Tree store?
Eventually, I did, yes.
What did you do there in general?
At the Dollar Tree, I was looking for cameras in that particular area that may have covered the parking lot area.
And did you locate any?
I did, yes.
What did you locate?
It was on the Speedy Q, gas station where the subway is, across from it. There were some cameras that had, quality surveillance systems.
And we saw here just a few moments ago a video. Did you obtain that video?
I did, yes.
How was that?
We contacted Mrs. Krzyzewski, and she was able to provide the video, to me, and I recorded it on my body camera.
She mentioned that there was looking for a white van. Is that the reason why you were looking for that white van?
It was, yes.
What was that?
Through my investigation, I received information that the white van was used by the defendant to drive to the store.
On the 8th of January?
Correct.
Did you locate that van after that?
I did, yes.
Where at?
I located it in Port Austin.
Anywhere in particular?
Yes, the defendant, I run a file check on the defendant, and it was at the Harbor Villa apartment complex at 299 Grindstone Road.
And did you go to that location?
I did, yes.
And what did you see there?
I saw two white vans and a Monte Carlo parked in the parking lot.
May I approach you, Honor?
Yes, you may.
Showing to the market as proposed exhibits 8 and 9. You recognize those, sir?
Yes,
And in general, what are they?
some photographs that I took at 299 Grindstone Road. There's a Monte Carlo, and there's also two white vans, large vans, windows all the way around it.
May I approach you?
Yes, you
They're showing proposed exhibit 10. Is this also what you're talking about?
That is correct, yes.
That's the Monte Carlo.
That is Monte Carlo, older model.
And why were you looking also at that car?
Because throughout my investigation, I was told that the defendant was known to drive that Monte Carlo as well.
Are these three pictures, 8, 9, and 10, in front of you, accurate copies of what you saw at that time?
Yes,
And accurate copies of what was pictures that were taken?
yes.
Move for the admission, Your Honor, of 8, 9, and 10.
Thank you. 8, 9, and 10 are the
Let me approach you, Your Honor.
yes, you may.
And sir, showing you has already been admitted as exhibits 3 and 4. They're inside the interior there of the Dollar Tree. When you were there, you went there, did you speak to anybody there?
Yes,
In general, who did you speak to?
I spoke with the victim there.
Anyone else?
I spoke with the manager briefly.
And these two pictures are from your body cam at that time?
That's correct, yes.
So you had that on at the time and it was on while you were there.
Yes.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
don't have any questions, Your Honor.
You may sit down.
Thanks, Chair.
Walt, you're next, please.
We have no further proofs, we rest.
Very well. Members of the jury, we are going to take a short recess. We'll reconvene momentarily. Just to remind you again, you are not to discuss the case with anyone. You are also not to look up any aspects of the case relative to using phones or other electronic. So we will take a short recess and reconvene momentarily. If you please follow Deputy Dirk after the jury. We'll recall you momentarily. Thank you. People arrested in this case, Ms. Sims, is there anything you want to bring up?
Your Honor, at this time, I would ask the court to have the case dismissed due to the lack of evidence shown. I don't believe that the prosecutor has left a point in order for a conviction of material. So that's kind of.
Very well, your MCR 6.419. Mr. Wallace, your response.
Yes, Your Honor. As the court knows and the state knows, courts will look at that motion in light of the moving parties, the most favorable, and really, the court has a standard of proof on that one, Your Honor. I'm gonna, but looking at that particular standard of proof in this case, Your Honor, it's clear that we have more than sufficient evidence here for a jury to find the defendant guilty if they so choose. There are 4 elements in this case, and based on the testimony of Ms. Miller, it's clear that all 4 of those elements could be proven through her testimony alone. In terms of that the defendant was there, she identified him, that he took his penis out, it was not accidental. She said he has his hand on it. I believe at one time she may have said that he was fondling it towards the beginning of the direct testimony, that she was obviously upset and disgusted as she testified to, and that those are the elements of this particular charge. And looking at the light most favorable towards the prosecution, and back to the standard of proof, Your Honor, we have shown that to be the case in this situation, and to fit more than sufficient for us to go to a jury.
Very well, thank you. Any rebuttal?
The fact that Miller's testimony is really the only testimony that appears to be relevant, and for the court to look at her credibility with her lack of recollection, with her inability to actually describe what she had seen. I would ask the court to consider that. And again,
Thank you. Standard of proof is under MCR 6.419. Standard of proof is as follows: directed verdict of acquittal is appropriate only if, considering the evidence most favorable to the prosecution, that no rational trier of fact find that the essential elements of the crime charged were proven beyond a reasonable doubt. The defendant is charged with the offense of aggravated indecent exposure. 4 elements. Element 1, defendant exposed his genitals. 2nd, that the defendant knew he was exposing his genitals. 3rd, that the defendant was fondling his genitals. And 4th, that the defendant did this in a place under circumstances in which another person might reasonably have been expected to observe it, and which created a substantial risk that someone might be offended, or in a place where such exposure is likely to be an offense against your community's generally accepted standards of decency and morality. In determining this, you must think about the nature of the act and all the circumstances surrounding the act. According to the testimony of Ms. Tanya Miller, on January 8, 2022, she was testified that she's the closing manager that day at Dollar Tree, located in the city of Bad Axe, County of Huron. She started around 1:30. And at 3 p.m., she was in the pets/electric/hardware department. She also described in that section there was a Disney D-I-S-N-E-Y display. And she testified she had seen the defendant before, and even had seen him approximately 1 time per week for a while. There wasn't specifics as to how long, but it was for a while. She had testified that they had talked on the other side of this Disney display, just a brief conversation. There was no detail regarding what the nature of the conversation was, but it was a standard conversation. Ms. Miller testified that she went toward the back end of the store, a little farther where I'll call it the dog toys are. She had stated that the defendant had followed her, was facing her, had the grocery cart to the side, and had his penis exposed. And I believe at one point she had stated that he was playing with it. She further testified that she was very upset, very offended by what she had seen. Based upon that, based upon those observations, she then went to the manager's office, waited for the individual, the defendant, to check out. Once the defendant had checked out, she made contact with Ms. Candace Fox, testified what she had done relative to a hand sanitizer for Ms. Fox, as well as spraying the money that was in the till. And that's essentially her testimony. She did testify as well that the cameras in the store do not work. She also testified that when she was actually speaking to the defendant when they had moved past this Disney display, and that at that time his penis was indeed out, according to her. She further testified that she did not call police immediately. She eventually talked to reach out a couple days later, a day or two later, when she testified that the defendant had re-entered the store on another occasion, just simply shopping event, that Officer Hunter was then called. Officer Hunter appeared at the scene, had gotten some information relative to the defendant, his name, it was just simply contact information, I think a phone number as well, maybe an address, and that was the extent of it. Candace Fox had testified that she also worked that day on day shift, and she worked the day shift between 9 and 10. She started and worked till about 3 or 4. She testified that around 3 o'clock, when Ms. Miller went either into the manager's office or was next to the manager's office, Ms. Fox had testified that the alleged victim, Ms. Miller, appeared nervous, visibly upset. And essentially that was the testimony, and I need to back up a bit. The alleged victim, Ms. Miller, had knowledge of the defendant before regarding him being in the store at least once a week. Also, that she was quite surprised that when she was putting up flyers for a fundraiser for her son, that the defendant had donated $100. So she had knowledge of the defendant as well. So when you consider all of that, clearly there's sufficient evidence, uncontroverted at this point, but it's up to the jury to decide that the defendant did expose his penis. There's evidence that the defendant, I mean, you can't go into the mind of the defendant, but based upon circumstantial evidence and considering the testimony of the alleged victim in this case, that it would appear that he had at least some knowledge of his behavior. He was clearly, according to the witness's testimony, either playing with his penis, words to that effect, and she had testified regarding how upset and really how upset and offended she was based upon what she had seen. So there's sufficient evidence to overcome a directed verdict, but there's another component that the court has to consider, and that's credibility. And it is not permissible for a trial court to determine the credibility of the witness in deciding a motion for directed verdict, no matter how inconsistent or vague that testimony may be. That's a question for the 12 individuals there. Based upon all of that, the court finds the directed verdict not appropriate, motion is respectfully denied. Ms. Siv, do you wish to present any proofs at this time? All right, and you discussed with Mr. Rios the advantages and disadvantages, and it's his decision that he wishes to proceed in that fashion. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Honor.
All right. I just want to make sure we have that clear for the record. You ready to proceed?
Probably have a few moments.
Let's take 5 minutes and we'll reconvene momentarily. We'll take a brief recess, go off the record, and we'll recall the matter momentarily.
Thank you.
Thank Court recalls people of the state of Michigan versus Leandro Rios Jr. Members of the jury have returned. The people have rested in this case. And Ms. Sid, do you wish to present proofs at this time?
Yes, Your Honor, I would call Mr. Rios. Please.
All right, thank you. Mr. Rios, would you please step up and speak? Before being seated, sir, would you please raise your right hand?
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this case is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Please be seated. Make sure, sir, you speak loudly and clearly. Ms. Sid, you may proceed.
Thank you. Mr. Rios, will you please state your name?
My name is Leandro Rios Jr.
Can you spell your last name?
RIOS.
And Mr. Rios, where do you live?
I live in Port Austin. 299 Redstone Road.
And how long have you lived there?
5 years.
What is your occupation?
I'm a participant. Airline castings.
Yeah, we're gonna go back to January 8th of 2022. Where were you at on that date at approximately 3 o'clock in the afternoon?
I was doing my shopping in poetry.
And what type of shopping were you doing?
My snacks. You know what I get there.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the answer.
Can you repeat these?
I was getting my snacks. I usually always go when I get there.
Thank you.
And how often would you go to the Dollar Tree to go shopping?
Weekly, sometimes twice a week. I forget something.
And how long have you been going, or prior to that incident, when did you first start going to the Dollar Tree?
I've been going ever since I moved out here.
So back on January 8th of 2022, when you were at the Dollar Tree, were there other people in the store at the time you were there?
There were a few people, yes.
And was there anybody in the store working that you were familiar with?
Yes.
And who was that?
I remember that. And that's the other lady, I don't want to name her name.
Did she testify here earlier today?
No.
How did you meet Miss Miller?
I went to the store shopping at the store.
And how long have you known Miss Miller for?
3 to 4 years.
So while you were at the store, you said you saw Miss Miller there. Did a conversation take place between yourself and Miss Miller?
Yes.
Who initiated that conversation? Who started that conversation?
Oh, I'm not sure we just started talking. I'm not sure who started it, but
Okay. Do you remember what you talked about?
I don't know that's how we were doing. How the family was doing and stuff.
So you would ask how her family is doing?
Excuse me?
You spoke about family and how family was doing?
Yeah.
And when you were having this conversation with Miss Miller, what were you doing at that time?
Getting on my car.
The leaning on a cart, is that a shopping cart?
Shopping cart, yes.
Did you have items in your shopping cart at this time?
Yes, I did.
Do you remember what items that you had in
I
them?
had my juices, my cleaning detergents, napkins. And
So while you were having this conversation with Ms. Miller, was your cart, where was your cart placed? Located? Directly in front of you?
Directly in front of me.
How long would you say this interaction lasted between yourself and Ms. Miller?
And it's maybe 35 minutes.
3 to 5 minutes? And how did this conversation end?
She said, I'll be right back. She's gonna go check and see if Ashley needed help.
And what did you do after she left?
I just finished going around the store, finished my shopping.
Okay, you went through checkout and paid for your items. Do you have any contact with Ms. Miller outside of her employment at the Dollar Tree?
Yeah,
Can you,
twice,
you said
but I
twice,
remember that.
can you describe those times?
One time at Orange, she was there, I went to her, we spoke over there. That's the only time it was there. One time that I was in the drive-thru McDonald's, she caught my attention, and that was the day that I put her aside to the parking lot after I got my food, go to drive-thru, and she parked next to me. And she started saying to me, what's happening with her son and all that stuff. And
Okay, and so did she give you anything when you had that conversation with her about her son? Like a flyer or anything?
but she explained to me she was gonna get some flowers done at that time. And so she didn't give it to me at that moment.
When
I'm
did,
sorry, I'm having a hard time understanding. Can you speak up a little bit, please?
Okay, I drove McDonald's that day, and she was hollering, kept, getting my attention, and then I noticed it was her. So then I ordered my food, I parked in the parking lot, she came, parked next to me, and she started explaining to me, that they diagnosed her son with the illness. So I haven't had seen him for a long time at the store. She was out of the store for like 3 months or something like that. And and then she explained to me the situation she was going through.
so she shared information with you about her son's diagnosis?
Yes.
Okay. And did, this flyer, was that for a fundraiser for her son?
Yes.
And did you, donate to the cause?
Yes, I did.
What did you donate?
I donated $100 cash.
And you had mentioned that when you spoke to Ms. Miller that you would talk about family. Have you introduced Ms. Miller to anybody in your family?
Yes, my wife.
And back to, again, on January 8th of 2022. Did you, that you are aware, ever expose your genitals while you were at the Dollar Tree?
No, I did not.
Did you ever fondle your genitals
No, I did not.
at the Dollar Tree on that day? Are you circumcised
Objection, movement.
Response?
in regards to description or whatnot? I can strike that.
Objection is sustained.
And Mr. Rios, were you at some point told that you are not to go back to the Dollar Tree store?
The officer, no,
Okay.
so,
So when was the last time you were at the Dollar Tree?
the last time I was there was when the officer came and asked me for my identification.
Would that have been January 12th of that year?
I think it was down there.
I have no idea.
Thank you. Cross-examination, Mr. Wolf.
And Mr. Rios, that day on the eighth, did you drive the white van that we've been talking about?
Yes,
So that video, of the van coming in, that was you driving into the store or into the parking lot at that time. Well, you said that you did drive the van there. And on the Wednesday the twelfth, you drove the other car?
yes, my car.
Is that what you, how you got there on the twelfth?
Yes,
Now, you mentioned you were there at the store on the eighth, correct?
yes, I was.
And this would be about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, right?
Yes, more or less.
How long were you at the store itself? You believe, you recall?
Maybe like 15 minutes.
And we have the receipt here, it was introduced. And approach you on the issue. Exhibit 6, does that appear to be the items that you purchased while you were there that day?
Yes,
Accurate, as far as what portrayed there.
more or less. Yes,
You mentioned that you saw other customers there at the store on the 8th. That's true?
I saw the other lady that works there. As, saw another lady walk by us, me and them, and we were having a conversation.
So 4 or 5 people total then at the store at that time?
It seems a bit that day.
I'm sorry again.
It seems a bit that day. I just recall the lady that walked by, the manager, and that's it.
So I hear you say it didn't seem that busy at that time. Is that a correct statement?
Yes.
And you might do it. You heard Ms. Miller say that this is where the aisle that you were talking to her, is that what you recall?
Yes.
And she indicated that it started the conversation somewhere down this area where there was a glue at on the other side of the Disney display. You recall it that way as well?
More or less, yes.
I'm sorry?
More or less, yes.
Okay. And you heard her testify that she then moved down to this area here, and that you followed her around and stood on this side. You recall that? First off, you recall her saying that.
I heard her say that, yes.
You agree with that?
Oh, yes. We were speaking, and I just turned around and we were talking. She went over.
And then you came around the display and stood there and talked to her, continued to talk to her.
Yes,
You were asked about your shopping cart. You said it was in front of you.
yes.
In front of you, where are you standing at when that's happened, when that's the situation? When it's in front of you, where are you at?
Well, I was standing next on this right-hand side.
Okay,
That's side right there.
okay.
And there, the car was running.
So you're standing in front, first off, in front of the display.
Yeah.
And so you're reading about this area here,
Yes, yes,
and you're saying your cart was also in direct line with her, between you and her.
yes.
And so I hear you saying, correct me if I'm wrong, there was an obstruction between you and her at that time when you were talking.
Yes.
And that would be the cart.
Car, yes.
when she left, which way did she leave?
She had money.
Again, be careful when you say it that way. If you're standing here, the car, she's here, are you saying she went down the aisle this way or she went around?
Went back to this.
So she went down further, rest of the way out down the aisle?
Yes,
Okay.
it was front.
And you didn't see her again after that,
No, I did not.
as far as that day?
No.
And again, let's be clear here, you said no. I mean, did you see her again that day after that?
No.
Thank you. After she leaves, what do you do?
I was almost done, so I just walked around, grabbed a couple things more and passed out.
So there's no question that you were in the store that day, true?
Yeah.
You disagree or dispute that you did not expose yourself, correct? You and her prior to this day were friendly. I mean, you say hi, talk to each other, when you saw each other, no issues whatsoever, correct?
Correct.
Do you know of any reason why she would make this up?
Redirect, Ms. Sid.
No, no.
You may sit down. Sid, you next one.
I don't have.
Defense rest. Any rebuttal? Please be seated. You remain on the record. Members of the jury are in the jury room for a moment. Mr. Waltz.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to allow counsel the chance to object to this. I do plan on recalling Ms. Miller for a brief couple of questions. Not to go over obviously exposure at that point, but essentially just limited to after that, what she did, what she said, if anything, and what she did, if anything. 3 questions. But I recognize she has been in the courtroom, and that's why I wanted to allow counsel that opportunity.
Very well, thank you. Ms. Sid.
Yeah. At this time, I would object to Mr. Walsh calling Ms. Miller. I understand that she is a victim in this matter. However, she is also a witness, just like everyone else. That they have been sequestered. They have not been able to hear testimony prior to theirs. Ms. Miller has had that opportunity, and I just, based on that, that would be unjust to Mr. Rios if the court were to allow it.
Very well, thank you.
And the court, just as response, as was indicated, she is the victim, so she's allowed to stay here in this case and to listen to evidence, even if she wasn't excused. So we believe that there's no bias here or prejudice.
Ms. Sid, anything else?
I would just strongly disagree with that, actually, based on her being the victim and the one making these allegations. And given what our defense is, I would check that.
Very well, thank you. Well, I guess I look at it a little bit differently. She's the alleged victim in this case. She's not been a victim yet unless it's been proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant committed the offense as charged. However, as an alleged victim in the case, despite the fact that the witness is excused, the alleged victim is entitled to remain in the courtroom during the proceedings. And as a result of that, understanding the victim's rights statutes, as well as the fact that, being the alleged victim, she's in the courtroom and is entitled to be here, I have to deny the request. I'm going to allow rebuttal in this case based upon that. Now, if we're not the alleged victim, it might be a different story, but he's entitled to be in the courtroom. So as a result, the motion, I should say that the request that rebuttal not be allowed is denied, and you may call your rebuttal witness.
Thank you.
Your Honor, if I could just clarification that Ms. Miller is entitled to remain in the courtroom after she was excused. Or
Yes.
prior to that,
She's entitled to be in the courtroom.
just after she was excused.
Well, I guess, and I would say, excused or not, as the alleged victim, she's allowed to be in the courtroom.
Correct. That's my understanding.
And that was, I just wanted that clarification.
That's why, yeah.
You're entitled to that. Witness, and then we'll bring the jury back out here just a moment. Ready to proceed, Mr. Wallace?
Yes, Your Honor.
Ms. Sitt?
Yes.
I'll bring the jury.
Your Honor.
Yes. Let's see. Wait, where's up? We're back on the record, People versus Rios. Members of the jury have returned. And the court inquired regarding any rebuttal witnesses in this case, Mr. Wallace.
Yeah, people have no rebuttal.
Based upon that, members of the jury, we're going to send you back to the jury room, and we'll have the jury instructions prepared. And we should have you out here momentarily to begin closing statements and the final instructions. Again, reminding you, again, not to discuss the case. I'm sorry I'm doing the musical chairs with you back and forth, but there are certain things we have to cover that may not be related to the case at all that we have to address. That's why we do this, so we're not interfering and causing disruptions for you. But we'll take a short recess, have the instructions ready, and we'll begin closing arguments momentarily. Go back to the jury room. All right, please.
I'm gonna get my steps in.
Any matters we need to discuss other than going through instructions, Mr. Wallace?
No, I can take up that.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
These are the instructions the court intends to provide. When you're ready. 3.1 duties of judge and jury. 3.2 presumption of innocence, burden of proof and reasonable doubt. 3.5 evidence, including paragraph 8. 4.3 circumstantial evidence. 3.6 witnesses' credibility. It's requested by the people of 4.1 defendant statements, but there are no statements by the defendant.
That's correct, Your Honor.
And nor are there any prior inconsistent statements used to impeach under 4.5.
People agree.
If you agree, 4.1, 4.5 would not be provided?
Yes,
sir. No one requested 4.9 motive, I don't believe. I don't recall that.
People do that.
I have it in my yard, but we can strike that.
Okay, I'm sorry. That's why I had it in there. What about 4.16 intent? Mr. Wallace.
I think the instruction, the main instruction is sufficient for showing that it has to be done. It's not accidental. I think that states that, and that's sufficient.
So you're requesting 4.16?
No, Your Honor, requested not to give it.
Okay.
I would ask for that, to be a runner, and it would help for the jury to have, that to go off in regards to the, materials of intent. One of the elements is that the offender knowingly or whatnot. So
All right, as I look in the elements of indecent exposure, again, the elements include whether genitals were exposed, whether he knew they were exposed, that was alleged, whether or not he was fondling his genitals, and then under where it might be expected. I don't see anything regarding intent in this case. It just appears to be knowledge that he was exposing his genitals. So as a result, I will not be providing 4.16 of 10. Do intend to provide 5.2 weighing conflicting evidence, number of witnesses. I don't recall, and I know Mr. Wallace normally requests 5.3 witnesses who've been interviewed by a lawyer, but I didn't hear that during the course.
It did not go out, Your Honor.
Ms. Ziv, I'm assuming you don't want that instruction either, correct?
Correct.
5.11, police witnesses would be provided. Then the elements under 20.33, indecent exposure. 3.10, time and place venue, on or about January 8, 2022 within Huron County. 3.11, deliberations and verdict. 3.13, penalty. 3.14, communications with the court. 3.16, written recorded instructions in the jury room. 3.15, exhibits. 3.17, single defendant, single count. And 3.23, verdict form. Mr. Wallace, are there any instructions that you believe that we need to include or exclude?
None that I can think of, Your Honor, either way.
Thank you. Ms. Ziv, how about you?
I'm sure the court mentioned it, but included 5.2.
Yes, Wayne, yes, I did. Wayne, conflicting evidence, number of witnesses. Yes, that would be. Anything else? Ms.?
Nothing further.
Okay. Any other instruction before I go back into the court or back into chambers of appearance?
No, Your Honor.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Court will prepare and they're just about ready anyway, just have to do a couple deletions. Ms. Hatch will prepare the verdict form. We should have that out to you no later than about 5 to 10 minutes. Take a short.
We have about 3 hours.